Hello. So today we are going to be looking at the poem Some Ladies Dress in Muslin Pure and White by Christina Rossetti. And our LO today is to be considering how gender is presented in her poem. Please make sure you have in front of you your anthology, your poetry grids, and I would also suggest having your contextual notes in front of you just to support your understanding, because as you know, context is marked for the Rossetti section of the poetry paper, so it's always worth having that at the back of your mind at all times. And before we even have a look at the poem, what I'd like you to consider is what you think the root of all evil is. Now, it might be a personal answer to you, of course. When I googled this very briefly, the classic answer is money. Money is the root of all evil. However, there were a surprising amount of people, particularly on Twitter, who stated that the Kardashians were the root of all evil. I'm not sure I quite agree with that one, but I'd like you to have a minute or two just to consider what you think is the root of all evil. What makes things bad? It's the poem then. Some ladies dress in muslin full and white. Some gentlemen in cloth succinct and black. Some patronise a dog cart, some a hack. Some think a painted claret's only right. Youth is not always such a pleasing sight. Witness a man with tassels on his back, or woman in a great coat like a sack, towering above her sex with horrid height. If all the world were water, fit to drown, there are some whom you would not teach to swim, rather enjoying if you saw them sink. Certain old ladies dressed in girlish pink, with roses and geraniums on their gown, go to the basin, poke them over the rim. Okay, so this is a satirical poem. You could argue it's quite a harsh poem. Um, in the ideas that she's writing about. You've got to again bear in mind this is an early poem by Rossetti, so she's again around 18 years old when she wrote it. Again, that is an approximate age because of course we don't know exactly when she wrote it, but approximately 18. I'm telling you that it is a Petrarchan sonnet, and you need to consider why and what that means, what a Petrarchan sonnet, what the usual connotations are, and then compare them to this poem. And then the summary. What do you think this poem is about? What is the general idea of this poem? So I'll give you a few minutes if you pause the video now to just have a think about what you believe the poem is about and why. Okay, so the summary then. So in the first three lines, the speaker sets out a few different scenarios for how the wealthy can act. Some ride in expensive carriages and wear pricey and high quality clothes. They believe that a painted clarence or a painted four-wheeled six-person carriage, that's what a clarence is the only way to travel. Rossetti is passing judgment on these men and women and their fancy clothes. In the next few lines, she describes another contingent, those who go against the grain in a different way, and these include women who do not act femininely, or with femininity, I should say, and men who dress with the express purpose of attracting attention. These are youthful people, and again, these offend the speaker. And the final few lines, the speaker daydreams over what it would be like to watch the young and old and rich drown in a world made of water. She'd rather poke them over the edge and watch them sink and drown rather than teach them how to swim. And she says that very explicitly. Now, of course, she is, half joking there. It is satirical. It is a jokey idea, but it's also this idea that she is judging them on almost this materialism that society seems to have. So that links to our themes then. So the themes that are present are obviously gender. Rossetti writes of disdain on both genders, men and women. She hates them equally. But it seems her frustration does appear to be mainly with women, though, and how they present themselves. She doesn't like it when women are dressed too fancily and, in expensive clothing, but she then doesn't like it when the women act in a not feminine way. So she kind of has that juxtaposition there. And then materialism. So Rossetti ridicules the materialism of society. Society puts stock in what their outfits are, how they travel. And this bemuses Rossetti, and it leads her to, wittily desire to have a Noah's Ark style flood to drown out all of this, the badness that this brings. Okay, pause for a second in case you need to make notes. So the analysis then. So I've got a glossary at the top of the slide for you. So a dog cart is a two-wheeled horse-drawn cart. A hack is a single horse with a rider. And a painted clarence is an enclosed carriage. Think like the stereotypical like Cinderella thing. That, I mean, obviously it's not pumpkin shaped. But, a carriage, nice and enclosed, horses in the front, 4 to 6 horses pulling it along. Very, very fancy is the kind of gist that she's going for here. So, some ladies dress in muslin full and white, some gentlemen in clothes succinct and black, some patronise a dog cart, some a hack, some think a painted clarence only right. Okay, so you've got the anaphora there of the word some, and it's used to represent that that not everyone, is being discussed. Some, not all. So some ladies, some gentlemen. It's not all ladies, all gentlemen. So, that it's used to represent that not everyone is being discussed. Then you've got the idea of some ladies dressed in muslin full and white. That white has connotations of femininity. So Rossetti's describing women in full white dresses. Then you've got the men in black clothing. Again, very simple clothing, properly arranged, neat on them, just very nice clothes basically, but very dark, very not drawing attention to themselves. And then you've got that so then the dog cart and a hack, so as we said in the glossary, and then the painted clarence only right. Rossetti is ridiculing the materialism of people as only one sort of transport is right. So by it's only right, it's the only one acceptable to these people. All of the ones listed, so the dog cart, the hack, and the clarence are all expensive, compared to the average person of this period who would just walk. But because the clarence is the most expensive, this is the one that's right. Okay, and then the context link there, being religious, she forewent luxury, and when her father got ill and couldn't work, the family struggled for money. So again, you've got perhaps even this almost subtle jealousy there of she would never get any of this because she was poor. What I would say is it's possibly more likely to be the religious element of it, because of course she never really had luxury, even when they had money, when the dad was working. They never really took part in any of the expensive luxuries that the really rich did. Okay, so pause and make notes. Okay, so I've put some questions there for you. So why is there no title? And there is no title to this poem. So when there isn't a title in a poem, we use the first line of the poem. So while in the anthology that you're using, it will call itself that. In actuality, there is no title to this poem. So why do you think that is? In line 5, why do you think she says that? So youth is not always such a pleasing sight. She's young. Bear in mind, she's only 18-ish when she's writing this. Why does she consider that? Line 7 and 8, what is her issue there? Line 9, how does the tone change for the sestet, so the last 6 lines? Lines 10 and 11, dark humour, or do you think she is semi-serious? Again, that's sort of consider what you think, but how does the poem reach that conclusion as well? Line 12, what is wrong with ladies wearing these clothes? Just leave that there. And finally, line 14, I've sort of said earlier, I've hinted at it anyway, what biblical tale could she be referencing? Okay, so do pause, do have a think about these questions and see if you can answer them for yourself to help you with your analysis. Okay, So youth is not always such a pleasing sight. Witness a man with tassels on his back, or a woman in a great coat like a sack, towering above her sex with horrid height. So you've got the first line that youth is not always such a pleasing sight. So it's somewhat ironic considering her age. Is she being judgmental, or is she being incredibly astute? Is she being incredibly intelligent there, with the idea that it's not always a pleasing sight? So again, there are two interpretations there. Is she just being judgmental of all of youth, or is she being intelligent and actually thinking deeply about the idea of youth? Um, we witness a man with tassels on his back. Rossetti's now ridiculing the bizarre fashions of the day. Having tassels on your back, wearing a great coat like a sack. It seems odd that that is fashionable at this point. And because people say it's fashionable, the rich will wear it. She's almost ridiculing that idea that people are buying into it. Um, just as I suppose today, whatever the latest fashion is, um, people will go along with it. So, for example, um, there are teenagers who have never listened to I don't know, a Rolling Stones song in their life, and yet they'll wear the image of I think it's the mouth with the tongue sticking out on t-shirts, etc., because that's fashion, but they don't know what it means, and it's bizarre that they've bought into it when they have no idea about it. And it's kind of that, and makeup looks, hair, it changes every couple of months, years, whatever, but we all buy into it because that's what someone somewhere's decided is fashionable at that period. So Rossetti's making fun of that idea. And then towering above her height with horrid height. So alliteration, the H, the horrid height, suggests her hatred of what she sees. She doesn't like women conforming to fashion, but she also doesn't like it when women are different either. So again, she's got that confused kind of idea that she just seems to not like it when rich women conform, or that they differ either. And again, context. Um, she's again, as I've said a million times, she's around 18 when she wrote this. Consider her nonconformist attitude in this stanza. Is it fairly typical that an 18-year-old ish would not want to conform to society's values and society's views? Is it, normal, I suppose, that an 18-ish-year-old would judge society? Again, you consider that for yourselves. So analysis of the next bit. So if all the world were water, fit to drown, there are some whom you would not teach to swim, rather enjoying if you saw them sink. So if all the world were water, again, the satire is now growing. Sorry, if all the world were water actually links to the Noah's Ark story. If you wanted to know, it's Genesis 7:1. Where all the sinners drowned and the righteous were saved by God. So that's why Noah is told to build the ark and save all the animals. Like he's saved by God because he was a good guy. And then the fit to drown, there are some who you would not teach to him. It's going quite comically vicious now. She's being jokey here. It is a joke. So Rossetti's saying that some types of people you would enjoy watching them drown. But again, as I've said there, please don't. She is making a joke. She's not truly wishing anyone dead. But I'm sure you've said, oh, why don't they just go and, whatever. But you don't actually want any harm to come to them. It's just sometimes when you're frustrated with something or irritated by something, you just say things off the cuff. So she is being quite comical there. Next, certain old ladies dressed in girlish pink with roses and geraniums on their gowns go to the basin, poke them over the rim. So Rossetti returns to the idea of women and their bizarre clothes. The young ladies are in their feminine white muslin seen at the top, seem somewhat less awful now than these now older ladies, certain old ladies rather, who wear these garish, flowery gowns that are, bright pink. And the idea that they're girlish pink, it's almost like these older ladies trying to recapture their youth. But actually, Rossetti uses it to signify that they're instead being stupid, their stupidity and their frivolity, um, they just look silly to Rossetti, um, in her eyes anyway. The basin section. So the basin is capitalised, giving ironic and humorous weight to this universal kind of idea of the washing up bowl. And this idea of poking them over the rim. It's colloquial. It's, poke them over the rim. It's jokey, but it's, colloquial is, jokingly cruel. It's almost like a horrifying social cleansing, to poke them into the washing up bowl, I suppose. You're cleaning them, you're purifying them, you're making them better, or making the world better. And then rim, the reader's expectations are upset here because rim rhymes with swim, of course, 5 lines earlier, rather than a rhyming couplet. And usually Petrarch and sonnets end in a rhyming couplet. But obviously this one doesn't. So this has an unsettling effect on us. Again, linking to this idea of the unsettling idea of people being, watching people drown because of their frivolity. Okay, so this is a context link that I found. So in the late 1870s, the poet Augusta Webster wrote to Rossetti asking for her to support her in a campaign that involved giving women the right to vote. Rossetti refused, and in her letter of response, Rossetti wrote, "Does it not appear as if the Bible was based upon an understood, unalterable distinction between men and women, their positions, duties, and privileges?" What I'd like you to do is, using this idea, using Rossetti's comments here, have a look in the poem that we've studied today and see what you can see that aligns with this idea. Where does it show that she believes that men and women have their own positions and duties and privileges? Okay, so you'll need to find a couple of quotes that sort of back that idea up. And nearly finally, so for further research and any other revision materials that you want, there's of course a YouTube video. This one is an 11-minute, it's a very short lecture from Cambridge University, and actually it's about how Rossetti was critically received in the period, and it's actually quite worth noting to your contextual notes and ideas that you've got both around this poem but around the poems in general. So wherever you've written your context notes, you might want to add to it from this YouTube video. And then underneath is obviously the poem analysis of this poem. There's some more detailed notes on this poem there for you. There are of course other websites, but poemanalysis.com just seem to have the most detailed there for you. And finally, do have a look before your next lesson at the poem The World, and make notes what you think it's about, and of course add to your A3 grids about the poem we've studied today.